Moving into a new neighborhood should be an exciting experience. New beginnings, fresh surroundings, and hopefully, friendly neighbors. But my first few hours in Evergreen Estates proved that my welcome wouldn't be warm. It wasn't the typical suburban experience of waving at neighbors or borrowing a cup of sugar. Instead, I was greeted by the queen of the Homeowners Association herself, Karen Whitmore, a woman who clearly believed that the world and my property operated under her rule. I had just finished hauling the last of my furniture inside when I heard an aggressive knock at my front door. It was the kind of knock that wasn't meant to be polite. It was a demand, a declaration of authority. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with a middle-aged woman with an unsettlingly perfect smile. Her platinum blonde bob stiff with hairspray. Her beige pantsuit ironed into crisp, militant precision. She clutched a clipboard with the HOA logo emblazoned at the top, like a badge of authority. "Hello there," she greeted, though there was no genuine warmth in her tone. It was the voice of someone used to issuing orders, not exchanging pleasantries. "I'm Karen Whitmore, the president of the Evergreen Estates Homeowners Association. Welcome to the neighborhood." I gave a polite nod, already wary. "Thanks." She took a step closer, looking me up and down as if appraising a new recruit for her army. "I see you're still getting settled in. Before you get too comfortable, I'll need to do a quick property inspection. It's standard protocol for all new homeowners to ensure everything is in compliance." I frowned. "Inspection?" "Yes," she said smoothly, gesturing toward my house as though she already owned it. "It's just a routine walkthrough. We take pride in our community's aesthetics and regulations. It won't take long. If you cooperate. The words dripped with passive-aggressive menace. I folded my arms, my stance firm. "I don't think that's necessary." Karen blinked. Clearly, she wasn't accustomed to resistance. "Excuse me? I've already read the HOA agreement. Nowhere does it say the HOA has the right to inspect the inside of my home. If there's an issue with the exterior, you can send me a written notice." Her fake smile wavered, but she recovered quickly. "We prefer to be proactive. It's easier to address concerns before they become problems." "That's great," I said. "But unless you have a legal warrant or written permission from me, you're not stepping foot inside my house." Karen's jaw clenched, and for the first time, I saw the simmering frustration beneath her polished demeanor. "I think you misunderstand how things work around here. The HOA is the backbone of this community. We ensure standards are met. If you don't comply, there are consequences." "That sounds like a threat," I said, my tone even. Karen tilted her head, lips curling in a tight smirk. "Not a threat, just an understanding. People who resist the HOA often find life here difficult. I'd hate for you to start off on the wrong foot." I chuckled, leaning against the doorframe. "Let me be clear. This is my house. I pay my mortgage, my taxes, and my HOA dues. That gives me the right to decide who enters my home. And you, Karen? You don't have that right." Her nostrils flared. "You may regret this attitude." I arched an eyebrow. "And you may regret testing me." A beat of silence passed between us, heavy with unspoken threats. Then, with a sharp huff, Karen turned on her heel and stormed away, her heels clicking angrily against the pavement. I watched as she stalked toward the HOA office, her clipboard clutched like a weapon, her spine stiff with indignation. I closed my door, shaking my head. I had dealt with HOA nightmares before, but Karen was on a different level. She wasn't just some busybody enforcing rules. She was a dictator, a suburban tyrant with too much power and too much time on her hands. The next morning, I woke up to the first of many battles in our war. A bright yellow notice was taped to my front door, the paper screaming "Violation" in bold red letters. Homeowner violation notice. Infraction: failure to maintain property to HOA standards. Correction required. Immediate compliance. Fine: $250. I read the notice twice, trying to wrap my head around the absurdity. My lawn was pristine. My house was freshly painted. My driveway was spotless. There was no violation. This was Karen's power play, her opening move in a game I had no intention of losing. I crumpled the notice and tossed it into the trash. If Karen thought she could intimidate me, she was in for a rude awakening. The first violation notice was just the beginning. Karen wasn't the type to let defiance slide. That woman thrived on control, and the moment I shut my door in her face, I had unknowingly declared war. Over the next week, she escalated her harassment with the precision of a seasoned dictator. It started with a storm of violation notices, each more absurd than the last. Day 1. A new notice, this time for improper trash bin placement. Apparently, my garbage cans, neatly placed at the curb like every other house on the street, were in violation of some obscure rule she had just pulled out of thin air. The fine? $150. Day 2. Another notice. This time, it was unapproved outdoor decorations because I had left a small potted plant near my front steps. The penalty? $200. Day 3. She got creative. Excessive noise complaint. Filed at 3 a.m., even though I was sound asleep at the time. The kicker? The complaint was anonymous, which meant she wrote it herself. By day 5, I had racked up over $1,000 in fabricated fines, and the real kicker? The HOA had the power to put a lien on my property if I didn't pay. I wasn't about to let that happen. I stormed into the Evergreen Estates HOA office, a soulless little building tucked behind the community clubhouse. The receptionist, an older woman with glasses too big for her face, gave me a nervous look as I approached the desk. "I need to speak with Karen," I said, slamming the stack of violation notices down. The woman hesitated. "She's in a meeting." "I'll wait," I interrupted, folding my arms. It took less than 2 minutes for Karen to appear, smiling like she'd just won the lottery. "Ah, Mr. Lawson," she purred, clasping her hands in front of her chest like a movie villain. "How can I help you?" I grabbed the topmost notice and waved it. "I think we both know this is bullshit." Her smile widened. "I assure you, all HOA notices are legally enforceable under the community guidelines." I chuckled darkly. Funny, I actually read the HOA bylaws. Nothing in here about potted plants, trash bins, or imaginary noise complaints. "So unless you've rewritten the rules overnight, you're harassing me." Her eyes flickered with irritation. "We only enforce what's best for the community. You may not realize it, but homeowners associations ensure property values remain high. If we let one homeowner break the rules, it creates a domino effect." I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "Cut the crap, Karen. You're pissed that I didn't let you into my house, and now you're trying to make my life hell." Karen let out a mocking laugh, tapping her perfectly manicured nails against the desk. "Mr. Lawson, if you truly feel you've been treated unfairly, you're welcome to bring it up at the next HOA meeting." "Great. When's the meeting?" Her smirk grew razor-sharp. "Next month." I let out a slow exhale, realizing exactly what she was doing. She wasn't just trying to find me into submission. She was dragging things out long enough that I'd either pay the fees or crack under the pressure. But she underestimated me. I turned on my heel and walked out, ignoring her smug expression. She thought she had won this round. She had no idea what was coming next. The next day, I came home to something even worse. A tow truck was in my driveway hooking up my car. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, marching over. The tow driver, a guy in his 40s with a baseball cap and a cigarette dangling from his lips, barely glanced at me. HOA order. Non-compliant vehicle. I stared at him. "My car is perfectly fine." He shrugged. "They said it was parked improperly." Improperly? I was parked in my own damn driveway. And then I saw her, Karen, standing across the street, arms crossed, watching with sadistic satisfaction. I stormed over. "You had my car towed?" She sighed dramatically. "Your vehicle was improperly positioned, blocking the aesthetic symmetry of the street." I stared at her. "You have got to be kidding me." "Rules are rules," she sang. I clenched my jaw. "You are crossing a line, Karen." She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "Oh, but Mr. Lawson, I'm only enforcing community guidelines. If you don't like it, you're welcome to take it up with the HOA board." I knew what she was doing. She wanted me to snap. She wanted me to lose my temper in public so she could paint me as the aggressive, unruly homeowner. I forced myself to breathe through my nose. "You enjoy this, don't you?" I said, my voice dangerously low. Her smirk returned. "I enjoy a well-run community." I didn't say another word. I turned, walked back inside, and slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Karen thought she had the upper hand, but she had just made a critical mistake. She didn't realize that I had been recording everything. Karen thought she was untouchable. She had spent years ruling over this HOA like a dictator, crushing any homeowner who dared to challenge her authority. But what she didn't realize was that she had finally picked the wrong fight. Her mistake wasn't just harassing me with fake violations. It wasn't just having my car towed on bogus charges. Her fatal miscalculation was assuming that I was just another pushover who would eventually cave under pressure. She had no idea I was about to burn her entire empire to the ground. That night, I sat in my home office, reviewing everything. Every violation notice, every fine, every piece of paperwork Karen had sent me. Then I turned my attention to the recordings. Thanks to security cameras on my property and my phone, I had captured multiple instances of her blatant harassment. More importantly, I had video proof of her admitting that she was targeting me. Footage of Karen smirking as my car was towed. Audio of her saying, "I enjoy a well-run community," when I accused her of harassment. Multiple HOA notices that directly contradicted the official HOA rulebook. But the real golden ticket? I had dug through public records and found something far worse. Karen had been running the HOA finances like her personal piggy bank. Questionable withdrawals, fines that never made it to the HOA budget, and maintenance costs that didn't line up with any actual work being done in the community. This wasn't just overreach, this was embezzlement. I had her. The next morning, I walked into the county clerk's office with a folder stuffed full of evidence of financial fraud and harassment. I didn't go alone. I had already contacted a lawyer who specialized in HOA abuse cases. He was more than eager to take the case once he saw the evidence. His advice? Go for the jugular. We didn't just file a formal complaint with the county. We also sent copies of the evidence to every homeowner in the neighborhood. That night, the entire HOA email list exploded. Neighbors, once blindly obedient to Karen's rules, now demanded answers. "Karen, what is this about missing HOA funds? Why are we paying for emergency landscaping when our yards look the same? Is it true that we don't actually have to follow half these rules?" Karen tried to do damage control, but it was too late. The next evening, the HOA meeting was standing room only. Homeowners who had never questioned Karen before suddenly wanted her head on a platter. I walked in right as Karen was trying to dismiss the allegations. "This is a misunderstanding," she was saying, visibly sweating. "The HOA acts in the best interests of the community. Then why are you issuing fines that aren't in the HOA bylaws?" I interrupted, holding up a stack of notices. Karen's face drained of color. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I didn't stop. "Why did you have my car towed illegally? Why did you lie about noise complaints? Why are HOA funds being used for emergency expenses that don't exist?" A homeowner in the back raised their hand. "Yeah. Karen, where's all the money going?" Karen stammered. Well, these financial reports are complex." "Not really," I said, holding up a copy of the HOA's latest expense report. "Here's the last 3 years of HOA budgets. $100,000 in landscaping fees for work that never happened. A mysterious $15,000 administrative cost last year. Can you explain that?" Silence. Then someone stood up in the back. "I say we vote to remove Karen as HOA president." The room erupted. Karen turned red, then white, then red again. "You can't just..." "We can," someone shot back. "According to HOA rules, we can vote out the president if there's cause. And this is cause." Karen looked around desperately, but no one came to her defense. The people she had bullied for years were finally done being afraid. A vote was called. And just like that, Karen was removed from power. The fallout. Losing the HOA presidency was just the beginning. The county launched a formal investigation into HOA finances. Within weeks, Karen was hit with fraud charges. She was sued by multiple homeowners, all of whom had been wrongfully fined or harassed under her rule. The HOA board was forced to refund thousands of dollars in bogus fines. Karen tried to save herself, but it was over. She lawyered up and tried to fight the charges, but the evidence was overwhelming. Eventually, she lost everything: her position, her reputation, and even her home. Turns out, she had been using HOA funds to cover her own expenses, and now that the money was gone, she couldn't afford her own house payments. Within 6 months, her home was foreclosed, and she was forced to leave Evergreen Estates altogether. The last time I saw her, she was packing up her things, avoiding eye contact as she loaded a moving van. I walked over, watching as she struggled to shove a box into the truck. "Need help?" I asked, smirking. Karen glared at me, pure hatred in her eyes. "You think you've won?" she hissed. I shrugged. "I don't think." "I know." She didn't reply. She just slammed the truck door and drove off, disappearing from the neighborhood forever. With Karen gone, the HOA went through a total overhaul. A new president was elected, one who actually followed the rules instead of making them up. All the ridiculous fines Karen had issued were overturned. The missing funds were recovered, and the community was finally free from her tyranny. As for me, I enjoyed my peace and quiet. No more fake violations. No more harassment. No more Karen. And the best part? I never had to let her onto my property. Not even once.